Excellent. Right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest Mum Predict Journeys in Patient and Public Involvement webinar. I'm really pleased to have along with us this evening Etomby Namme, who is actually one of our PPI members for the Mum Predict project. So it's fantastic that she's joined us this evening to talk about her journey and also as being a participant in a stage 1 clinical trial. So over to you, Etomby.
Thank you, Rachel. I have got a bit of a presentation here for us to go through. And what I'll be talking about today is really just going through the process of clinical trials and what they're involved and what being a participant in one is like. So I recently participated in a phase 1 clinical trial in March of last year now, actually. So it's coming up to a year since it happened. And so I thought I would kind of go through what's involved in the process and what it's like to be on one of those trials. So let's see. So I guess we start off with why should you participate in a clinical trial? And I'm really directing this obviously towards women because, you know, that's our cohort. And I think women are really underrepresented in clinical research. So historically, they've been underrepresented in clinical research because for decades, they were just categorically excluded from drug trials because of the belief that hormone cycles would mess up their results. So you just didn't have women on drug trials. So there are a lot of medications around today that we all take that have never been actually tested on women. So the side effects that are particular to women aren't really known. And yet there are known instances that, you know, women and men will react to drugs in different ways. So it is important to get a cohort of patients in a clinical trial that represents the population. So you need to have a diverse group of people to have a robust clinical trial. So that's why it's important to participate, is to be part of that community that provides that robust evidence and help people in the future who will be taking these medications. So what is a clinical trial and what are the phases involved in a clinical trial? So when we talk about a clinical trial, it's about when the medication or the treatment has already been created and it now needs to be tested in humans to see how people react to it, to see if it's effective, to find out what the long-term effects are and benefits as well. So it's split into 4 phases. So phase 1 is the initial testing phase, and it starts off with a small group of people, healthy volunteers that have the condition that is being treated, or it could be just healthy volunteers if they're testing, you know, the effect of perhaps a vaccine, for example. It might be only healthy volunteers with no additional medical conditions. So phase 1 is about testing the safety of the drug or the treatment. And it starts off with a very, very small group, like 5 to 10 participants. And if there are no adverse reactions in that group, it progresses to a bit of a bigger group, like maybe 15 or 20. And if there are no adverse effects in that group, they might spread it out to a few more groups. So it's about slowly adding in more people into the cohort to test its safety in a wide variety of people. And why I joined a phase 1 clinical trial is it's particularly important as women to be involved in these early safety trials because we do need to know whether drugs are safe in women and how the safety varies between the male environment and the female environment. So it's important to get a very representative cohort throughout all the phases of trials. And typically phase 1 trials are where there are fewer women involved. So some studies have stated 20% of women will join a phase 1 clinical trial. versus say phase 4, where that might be more 40% of women. But really 40% is about the maximum that you get in clinical trials when it comes to women participating in them and being recruited into them. So it is important to get women joining these trials. And phase 1 is obviously it's a scary phase to join, I suppose, because you're testing safety. And so it's the phase where not a lot is known about what kind of reactions people might experience with the new treatment or the new trial. However, the way it's done, it's very rigorous safety protocols that are followed. You will have some expected reactions that you get depending on what kind of drug it is. It's usually based on something, and there will be some kind of reactions that you might expect based on how the drug works physiologically. So it's not completely an unknown in a gray area, and everything is done really safely. And that's why they start off with very small groups to make sure that they've got it right. And it's so small that if there are any adverse effects, it can be quickly and effectively managed. So then you move on to phase 2, and that's once the drug has been tested for being safe. Now they need to test how effective it is and what dose it's effective at. So this is where they start trialing in larger groups, looking at different doses of the drug to see which dose produces the best effect, and maybe which dose starts to produce more side effects. So that can also be a phase of the trial where people are a bit apprehensive about joining, because you might get a dose that's a bit higher than maybe the optimum dose and might experience more side effects. Equally, if people are joining because they want to experience the benefits of the drug, then they might get a dose that's far too low and they wouldn't experience anything. So it's a bit more changeable in phase 2. However, like I say, everything is handled really safely. And they don't progress to the higher doses until they know that, the side effects are easily manageable, or maybe there aren't any in the lower doses before they'll progress to the higher doses. So at every step of the way, there are always safety protocols in place, and there's rigorous protocols that are followed. So then we've got phase 3, which is all about comparative analysis. So it's all about comparing the new drug, the new treatment, with what is currently in place. And if there's nothing currently in place, it might be comparing it to a placebo. So it's to see, is this drug better than what we already have, or is it actually causing an effect that's better than just a placebo effect, which is the perceived effect from just knowing that you're on a treatment without the treatment actually causing the effect. So once it's been established that actually the drug is effective, and it is more effective than a placebo, and it is more effective than what's currently used, it can then progress to phase 4. And many drugs and treatments will fail at different levels of these. So if it doesn't pass phase 1, if it's not safe, it's not going to progress to any of the other phases. And if it gets to phase 3 and it's not thought to be more effective than placebo, or it's not more effective than what is already a well-known established treatment for whatever condition it is, then it won't be approved for phase 4. So phase 4 is the post-approval monitoring of the drug. So once it has gone through, the safety protocol, it's gone through the dosage to see what's the right dose to be giving people. Then at phase 3, you're comparing that dose and that drug with what's currently available. And then phase 4 is, okay, now we're releasing this drug onto the market. It's been approved for early use, early adopters. So typically phase 4 will be offered to people who are suffering more greatly with whatever symptoms of the condition is they're trying to treat. So people who are perhaps more would benefit more from this new drug before it's sort of rolled out to a wider cohort of people. And it's about monitoring the more long-term effects and how people progress on it and whether it's useful. So phase 4 can last many, many years because we're looking at long-term effects. You're looking overall, and they do tend to collate data from across the globe as well to see how effective it is in lots of different populations. So those are all the phases of the clinical trial. Right. So when you are joining a clinical trial, one of the main concerns is what are the risks? It sounds like a risky thing. You're basically giving yourself up to be a guinea pig in the name of science, which you are. And there are risks to consider, and there are also some potential benefits to consider. So when you're considering joining a clinical trial, it's important to weigh up both of them. So some of the risks that you need to think about are the fact that you might experience side effects from the experimental treatment. Obviously, like I say, you are being basically a guinea pig, so you might get side effects that are expected or unexpected. If you're joining a trial because you want to experience the benefits of the treatment, you might receive a placebo rather than the actual treatment, and you wouldn't be able to know. So you might not get any of those benefits. And then there's also the time commitment. So a lot of these trials do require a certain amount of time that you commit to it. You might have to travel to the research center to do the trials. You might have to stay. So the phase 1 clinical trial that I did involved a 3-night stay and then 9 outpatient appointments. So I had to stay on the facility for 3 nights, and then 9 times over the course of about 2 or 3 months, I had to go back to the facility for follow-up tests and things like that. So it is quite a commitment. However, there are a lot of benefits aside from the fact that you're contributing to, research development, and you're contributing to potentially a drug that could change people's life being on the market and potentially life-saving treatment. Aside from that altruistic benefit, there's also the benefit that you get from actually being on the trial, the personal benefits, which is that you're getting regular and close monitoring. So if there's anything wrong with you, they will pick it up because they have to make sure there's nothing wrong with you before you even start the trial. And they have to make sure you continue to be healthy and safe, and they're monitoring your well-being throughout. So that is a benefit that you will get just by being on the trial. You also get access to this new treatment. So especially if you're joining it at a phase where they are rolling out the effective dose, for example, phase 4 or even phase 3, then you might actually get the chance to be one of the first people to benefit from this new treatment, and which could be life-changing for you. So, you get that, the privilege of that early access. And the other benefits are just the experience of being part of a trial. You do get a bit of a sense of a community with the other trial participants, especially if you're doing overnight stays like the one I did. It was quite a nice environment. Their group activities, they do try to make it quite a fun experience for everyone. And then there's also the benefit of financial remuneration. So a lot of these clinical trials do offer financial incentives, and they pay for your expenses. It might involve a nice stay somewhere. So there are some added benefits to doing it as well. So in terms of benefits, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. So participating in a phase 1 trial, you get the pioneer status. You are the first people willing to stake your life, if you like, to participate in these safety studies, and make sure that the drug is safe for people to take. And without people who are willing to sign up for that and participate in that, the trials could never go ahead, and no innovation could ever happen without people who are actually willing to do that. So you get bragging rights to being, the pioneer and the founding father for the treatment. Aside from that, like I said, you get very close monitoring and personal care, especially in phase 1, because it's all about maintaining safety. So the monitoring is very, very tight. The medical care you get is exceptional. They literally will pore over all of your results like you're a piece of data, which is great because it allows any problems to be highlighted and you benefit from that in real time. And then finally, you get bigger incentives. So when you're doing a phase 1 trial, there's much more financial incentive. I mean, some of these trials are paying up to $8,000 for participating in the trial. So they do really reward people financially in recognition for the risks that you are willing to take for the trial. So when you are joining a trial, any clinical trial at any phase, there is a very, very big focus on informed decision making. So they want to make sure that all participants understand the process that they're signing up for, understand what the purpose of the trial is, what the procedures are, what risks are involved, and they'll go through all the benefits for participating as well. So you do get a lot of information being given to you. And there are many opportunities to discuss that information with people who are on the research team. There is a big emphasis on the fact that it is voluntary, any time without any explanation. And it is an altruistic thing to do to participate in a clinical trial, because at the end of the day, you might not benefit specifically from it personally, but other people will definitely benefit from these studies being done and potentially new treatments and innovative care being created. Oh, what did I do there? Right, there we go. So the first part of joining a clinical trial is, aside from finding out what it's about, is going through the screening and enrollment process. So you start off with an initial assessment, and that determines whether you're actually eligible to be part of the trial. So this is after you've found out information about the trial. You said, oh, this is something that I think I might be interested in. You get in touch with the team. You will usually bring you in, or they might do like an enrollment on the phone or online. And it's just initial screening to see whether you meet their criteria. Especially if you're joining in a phase 1, a lot of that criteria will be about how healthy you are, because they need to start with sort of healthy volunteers, quote unquote healthy volunteers. It's still people with the disease, but they're well with it. So the trial that I participated in was a sickle cell trial. So you had to have sickle cell, but you also had to have not had any hospital admissions for I think the last 3 or 4 years, and be on stable dose of your medication. So basically, they're looking for people who are maybe have the disease but are healthy with it, so that they can test the safety. So once you go through the screening process, you then go through a further process of evaluation, which is where they will typically do sort of the health screening. So they'll normally bring you in and do like a medical screening. So you get a nice little MOT as well. Even if you don't get enrolled, you've had an MOT, and they do tell you what the results are if they find anything that they think you should maybe bring up to your primary physician, to your GP or whoever. And then if you pass that stage as well, you then get enrolled. So in the process of enrollment, again, they will again go through what the trial involves, what the risks are, what your commitments are. You get very detailed information. It might involve a visit to the facility if you're going to be staying there. So it can be a bit of a lengthy process, the screening and enrollment, but it's all done to ensure that everything is safe and that participants feel well supported and are making a well-informed consent. So what can you expect when you actually join a clinical trial? So it is a big commitment because you are basically signing up to say that you are going to strictly adhere to the trial protocol. And when you're signing your consent, you basically sign a contract to say that you agree to follow the protocol, and they'll tell you what the protocol is and what things you need to stick to. And you do really need to stick to it because obviously it affects the outcome of the results. It usually involves scheduled visits. So they'll run through the schedule of what your visits are like over the course of the whole trial to make sure it's something that you can commit to. And they'll also talk through how you can attend, what you might need to support your attendance, and any problems that you envision having throughout the whole process to make sure that it is something that you can actually go through. So when I did it, I had to visit the facility, which was not where I live. So it was about a 4-hour drive away. So I went there and we kind of ran through the dates that I would need to be there. And then and there, I had to look at my work schedule and see if I could fit it around my work schedule and see if I could fit it around my childcare as well. I had to, I was given the time and the space to like make the calls to work to see if I could get the time off, make the calls to babysitters, family, whoever was going to be looking after my son, and make sure that it was something that I could actually commit to. I didn't have to make the commitment then and there, but I was given the time and space to do that. And also you have the option of then going away at that stage and doing it. You don't necessarily have to do it while you're there. But so they do give you the time to make sure that the commitments fit around your life and you're able to actually commit to it without it putting undue stress on you. After that, you will then, once you commit to being part of the trial, you're also committing to possibly adhering to strict dietary requirements or lifestyle requirements. And you're also agreeing to report any health changes. So they want to know if there's any change to your health status at all. So the trial I participated in, if I got a cold, I had to call them, tell them. If I had a headache, I had to call them and tell them. They really want to know every detail because these are things they're monitoring to have good, effective trial results. So there is an open line of communication all the time, and it's very easy to get in contact with people on the team who are managing you. So it didn't feel like a big burden, to be honest. It was just a matter of sending an email. I did get a cold, I think twice while I was on the phase 1 trial, and I just sent them an email saying, just to let you know, I've got a cold, I feel fine, carrying on with my day. And I got an email back saying, great, thanks for letting us know. And that was literally it. So you do have regular monitoring, and they'll go through all the monitoring requirements during the scheduled, when they go through the scheduled visits. And so I had to have regular blood tests, and the outpatient visits were to facilitate those blood tests. And it wasn't just blood tests, it was basically a full workup every time. It was like blood test, weight, a full clinical examination. So yeah, you're definitely kept very healthy while you're on these trials because you essentially have a whole team of doctors who are concerned about your health. So you're a VIP. So yeah, so it's quite a heavy process in terms of adhering to the protocol. You have to stick to the treatment schedule. Some of them can be quite strict, so it can be difficult to stick to on some of them, where the dates are not really movable and things happen in life and you might not be able to make it, in which case it might result in you being withdrawn from the trial if you're not able to make that commitment because something's come up. It's something that happens regularly in all trials and it's accounted for, so it's not something that you have to worry about as a participant. It's just one of those things. And you are responsible for attending your scheduled appointments. A lot of trials do offer compensation for travel expenses, so you don't necessarily have to worry about that. And that is something that they'll go through with you during the onboarding process as well, how they are going to compensate for the travel expenses and the added expense or pressures of attending the scheduled appointments. And a lot of the financial remuneration is to account for that as well. And as I said, you have to promptly report any changes to your health, your medications. Changes to your health and medication doesn't necessarily mean that you will be withdrawn from the trial. It's just a lot of the time it's just so that they know and they can account for it. Right. So, what are the real life benefits of actually being part of the trial? What are the real time benefits? So, actually participating in the trial itself, for me, was a really rewarding experience. Like I say, I had an overnight stay. It was a 3-night stay. And during that time, I met other people who had my condition, and it was a bit like having a sleepover with a support group. People were sharing their experiences and sharing their stories. Dinner was provided, there was movie night, there were games, there were computers. It was just a really nice experience and a really nice bit of time away as well. I've put a picture of a woman reading a book there because I basically spent my time there just relaxing. It was like a little holiday. So yeah, it was a good experience, and I think other people there that I spoke to quite enjoyed their time there as well and would consider doing it again. It was quite enjoyable. Depending on where you go and the different trials you do, you might also get some 5-star cuisine. Some of these trials do employ chefs to come in and create exquisite meals because they want to make it a nice experience for people. You might also get put up in a hotel. I did get put up in a hotel for a big part of my trial because I was doing it away from home and I had to travel for it. So when there were outpatient appointments that were quite close together, they just put me up in a hotel for 10 days, which was quite nice. It's a little paid for holiday. Got to explore the area in between because you're literally just going in to take blood and then the rest of the day is free. So I got a bit of all expenses paid holiday, so that was quite nice. And as I say, you get access to expert medical care. So there are a team of doctors that are present for the trials, and they are making sure that everything is safe. And if anything happens, if anyone gets unwell, they are there to provide medical care. And I did actually experience some real-time benefits on that trial as well, because during my time on the trial, they did pick up some changes to my blood tests, and they picked up an abnormal urine test, and they were able to arrange some scans of my kidneys, and they contacted my primary physician, and my medications were adjusted. So I actually experienced benefits to my health from participating in the trial. So we've gone through the screening and enrollment and assessing your eligibility and the enrollment process. And throughout all those levels, there is always a good line of communication and connection with the research team. So there usually is a dedicated phone line, there's usually a dedicated email. They provide you with access to online portals for information, and to stay connected with them as well, or to submit your expense claims. And then you have the in-person visits as well, where somebody will check in with you. They do have well-being teams as well to make sure that participants are well supported. So it's not just about making sure that you are doing the trial and they're getting the results. They are actually focused on ensuring and maintaining your well-being in the process as well. You also are made aware of your rights as a participant throughout the process. So, you have the right to clear information, and they do make sure that you receive that information clearly and you understand it. And they go through all the procedures with you. They do go through why they're doing this trial. And if you have any questions at all along the way, you're completely free to ask. And there's always someone there to talk to about it. And you also have the right to privacy and voluntary participation. So none of your data is going to be out there for anyone to see. It's all anonymized in these clinical trials. So they make sure to protect your privacy as well. One of the other things is when you do participate in the clinical trials, you agree not to share the information with anyone. So you do have to sign a non-disclosure. You're not allowed to take videos in the area or really tell anyone about it, just to protect the information and protect the research. It's not like you're not allowed to tell your family and friends that you're participating in the clinical trial. You're just not allowed to sort of post about it or advertise it or give out any details. So some of the common concerns about participating in trials are whether it's safe. So people worry about whether they're going to experience side effects, and clinical trials are there to see whether these treatments cause side effects. So you might experience side effects, but these trials have to go through a really rigorous ethical review before they are approved to run. And everything is subject to regulatory oversight by the health authority. So it's all really, really tightly scrutinized to make sure that it is safe for all the participants at every stage. And it is very rare that really bad adverse effects happen. I think there were a couple of cases where there were some bad adverse effects that happened quite a few years ago now, and regulatory bodies really learned from that and put in even more stringent rules and guidelines around that to make sure that people are kept even safer, and these mistakes from the past aren't repeated. The other thing that people worry about is whether they might experience long-term effect. There is always the risk of experiencing a long-term effect, and that is something to consider when you join the clinical trial. And they do go through what could the long-term effects possibly be if there were to be any. So that's something you need to consider. And there's always, like I say, an open line of communication for you to discuss that with the research team. Another concern is whether the treatment would be effective. So, a lot of the time people are joining the trials hoping to get some effect from this new medication, and you might not experience that. You might be joining at a phase where there isn't an effective dose yet, or you might be given the placebo. So it's never guaranteed that you're going to benefit from the treatment by joining a clinical trial. However, equally, you might benefit from it. And there are cases where people benefit from it right from phase 1, because it just so happens that the dose that is being tested for safety happens to be an effective dose, and they do experience benefits. So nothing is guaranteed, and that's something that you need to be aware of. Another thing people worry about is whether it might impact your current treatment, and that's a discussion to have with the research team during the onboarding process. And it's something that they go through as well, obviously when they're doing the health markup, or workup rather, they go through all your medications with you, and they literally go through all your medications, over-the-counter medications, alternative therapies, absolutely anything that's going in your body that might affect the treatment, they want to know about it. So if there's anything that could possibly interact with the treatment dose, they will let you know. And you may not be able to participate in the trial if there's going to be some interactions, because what they don't want to do is to be stopping you taking your current treatment and your current management. The other thing people might worry about is the informed consent. So a lot of the information can be quite detailed, and there is often a lot of information to take in when you're reading it all to make sure that you are providing informed consent. And you might be worried that you might not be able to take in all the information or understand it. But you are given a lot of time to consider it and support around that as well. There's plenty of opportunities to discuss it with someone, and they'll break it down for you and ensure that you understand it. And a lot of the information is produced in a simple format, so everyone can read it and understand what the purpose of the trial is and what they're looking for and what effects that they are looking out for, what side effects they're looking out for. And they do produce quite detailed documents, and that's all scrutinized before it's approved as well. So there's plenty of opportunity to discuss the information to make sure that you're supported and you can provide informed consent, no matter what your level of communication or understanding is. And the other thing people want to know is whether they get updated about their health status. So yes, they do. If they do find something that requires medical attention, they will tell you about it and you will get the medical attention to sort it out. So it's great for, real life health checkups. Now, in terms of commitment, it is a big commitment being part of a clinical trial. And people worry about whether they might be able to meet that commitment, or what if they think they can meet the commitment, but as time goes on, they're actually not able to. Things change. A lot of these trials run over a couple of months, maybe even a year. The one I did ran over 4 months in total. And there was a period of time during that time where I said to them, look, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to continue. And these are the difficulties that I'm having. And they were actually able to work around the difficulties, move dates around a little bit for me, provide some extra support in terms of transport. So they are very flexible, and they work with you, and there is that communication and space to do that, and they work with everyone as an individual to make sure you're supported. And if at any time you want to withdraw, you can withdraw without any explanation. And yeah, the other concern is about whether it might cause any financial constraint. And as I say, there is they do normally cover expenses, travel expenses especially. And there is often financial benefit to being part of these trials in attempts to kind of cover or account for the financial strain that committing to being part of the trial might cause. So that's all something to consider when you're joining the trial, but know that there is support available and these things are accounted for. So like I say, a lot of trials do provide support services for participants. So they want to make sure that your well-being is maintained throughout the trial. So they often do have access to counseling. They do provide educational materials, and there are support groups available as well. So it is quite generally quite a nice experience. I felt very supported throughout the whole process, and there was always someone available for me to talk to if I was ever worried about anything, ask any questions. So yeah, it is quite a supportive environment. So I hope that's convinced you all to join the medical revolution and sign up for some clinical trials at any phase. I really do want to encourage more women to take part in it, just so that we can have that data and make sure that women are represented in the cohort of participants. And, you know, we know that drugs are suitable for us to take. So if you are interested in joining clinical trials, there are a few ways you can do that. So you can go onto the National Institute for Health Research Clinical Research Network website. If you type in NHR, be part of research into Google, that will take you direct to the website, and they list all the government-funded organizations that are doing clinical research in the UK, and you can join through there. There's also the UK Clinical Trials Gateway, again, which provides a list and tells you how you can participate. There's the NHS Clinical Trials website that does the same thing. Or you can go direct to the disease charity websites, where they'll often list what clinical trials are running and how you can join. For example, if you go onto Cancer Research UK, they have a tab for clinical trials, and they have links to join the various clinical trials that are running. You can also go to research organization websites, like specific ones like MAC Clinical Research, which is the one I was part of, Panthera Clinical Research, Empathy Global Clinical Research. And the other way you can go is by getting the information from patient support groups. They will often share information about clinical trials when they're recruiting. And it's also useful if you tell your specialist provider that you are open to being part of a clinical trial. A lot of doctors who are providing your care will know about what clinical trials are going on. They may even be part of the recruitment team, so they will be quite happy and quite keen to hear that you want to be part of the trial, and they'll forward you details on, or they'll send you, the links for how to get in touch with people to be part of the trials. So thank you very much for listening to my lengthy rambling. If you have any questions, I'd be quite happy to answer them.
Thanks, Etomby. That's really interesting, actually. I've been involved in trials, but not at that stage. So it's absolutely fascinating to hear about that really, that really early approach to developing medications and so on. That's especially since it's such a different methodology to what we used in Mum Predict. So thank you very much indeed for taking part. I'm going to stop recording now, and then we'll take some questions. Recording.